Greetings, friends. Good to see you today. We are going to be talking out of the book of Revelation, chapter 1, verses 19 and 20. When I began to start to think about starting a business and became serious about it, the first thing that people told me was that I needed a business plan. I really did not want to make a business plan. It seemed like a waste of time because I thought that I understood what I wanted to do, and all I really needed to do is to do what I wanted to do, and all this other stuff was for other people, that the business plan would not be for me. Further, it was so detailed in terms of what they wanted me to do that I felt, oh my gosh, it's going to take forever and I'm never going to get to what I really want to do because I'm going to be spending all my time writing a business plan. It turns out that the reason that people want a business plan is because it helps, because it identifies a roadmap for what you want to do. Otherwise, you don't know exactly what you want to do and exactly how you're going to do it. If you're going to do anything in life, you need to know what it is that you want to do and then have a strategy or a plan on how to do it. A lot of times believers just say, God gave me this idea, I'm just going to start it, and that is fine. Do start, but along with starting, have a plan, write it down, and you find yourself in a position of being more successful, right? And that's just straight out of the business books. When we look at this communication strategy that the Lord employs in Revelation chapter 1, verse 19 through 20, I want us to evaluate the significance of writing something down. So verse 19 says, therefore write down the things which you have seen, and the things that are, and the things that will happen after this. This is the mystery of the 7 stars you saw in my right hand, and of the 7 golden lampstands. The 7 stars are the angels of the 7 churches, and the 7 lampstands are the 7 churches. So he begins by really giving John the instruction to go ahead and write down the things that he has already seen. In other words, what John is doing in this part, and what the Lord is doing in this part, is identifying the history. In your particular circumstance, if you were writing down a vision, the first thing that you need to do before you even get started is to evaluate your skill set. In this sentence, it says, write down the things that you have seen, the things that you saw before. What happened before now? In your own life, what happened before now that has led you to this point? Whether it's a career plan or an entrepreneurial venture, whatever that is, in some way, God has prepared you for this moment, and he wants you to implement something in this moment in your life. Doesn't matter what the moment is, because we're here at this place by divine providence. There is nothing that has happened to you that is going to be wasted. Nothing, all of that was happening for you. All the pain that you've experienced, all that you've endured, all the joys that you experienced, all of that has brought you to this point. So then if you were to write a mission statement from this point, you would indeed need to go back and look at your history and say, this is what I did before. This is who I was before. These are the ways that I have grown. This is the way that my suffering has grown me. Right? You can write that down and identify what has happened. So now we're going into a new season. We're going into a new venture. We're starting a new day, because actually yesterday is over. Yesterday is gone. All its good and its bad, all its opportunities and all the obstacles, all of that is done. There is no yesterday practically in our experience. It exists because it exists in our mind. We have a place in our mind where we store our yesterdays, but that's the only places it exists, is in our mind. Otherwise, it doesn't exist, right? So when it's time to move forward, we can evaluate our yesterdays based on what's in our mind, but we cannot make living in our mind the point of our existence. God wants more for us than that. I understand if a person has a mental issue, or if they are in a state of dementia, that's a completely different thing, because people, when they enter that state, they experience reality in a different way, and what has happened is happening. But if the Lord has given you a good mind, then he's expecting you to use your good mind to go forward. So then when we get ready to look forward, it's fine to look in our mind and say, okay, what already happened, and we can write that down. As a matter of fact, can I tell you it's a good idea to just go ahead and what skills, what has happened to me, and you could get a piece of paper. You could say, what has happened for me? What has happened to me? What skills have I developed? Write that down. What difficulties have I had, and what did I learn from those difficulties, or what can be learned from those difficulties? So to evaluate what has happened and to write that down gives you a good foundation for moving forward, because now you know what you're capable of. You have an idea of what you can do and how you can approach it as you. Any opportunity or any vision that you have, it will occur as you. It will not occur as someone else. So it's impossible then for you to cut and paste somebody else's strategy into your plan. You can take some fundamentals. I'm not saying you can't learn anything from anybody, but to cut and paste and say, okay, they did it this way, so I'm going to do it that way. You're not accounting for who you are and how being you impacts that. There has to be some kind of a modification of it, right? So if you've gone through, you've made this decision and you made that decision, you feel like, okay, that was a bad decision. Well, why was it a bad decision? And then what did I get out of that decision? And you can write all that down. Write down all your stuff, write it down. And you will get a good idea of, listen, who you are and how you can go forward. Then the next thing he says, after he says, write down the things that you have seen, write down the things that are. And for us, that's a good application. That indeed, after we have written down all that we have done, all our history, all our past, which only exists in our mind, it doesn't really exist anymore. So anything is possible from here. You can develop yourself from here. So now, write down the things that are. What resources do you have? Who are you now? What are you bringing to this project? What does it look like? Okay, this is my... I don't believe finances should stop you from doing anything of what God said do, because God can, my dad used to say, God owns a cattle on 1,000 hills, and he does. But then after that, my dad would say he can give me a helicopter. And yeah, he can. But let me get back to my point. So you are evaluating what you are. You do want to know, what is my financial circumstance right now? Not that that's going to limit you, but you need to know what that is. What resources do I have available? What emotional resources do I have available? Because sometimes you have to go through some kind of process of healing as you move. I'm not saying you have to be completely healed in order to move and all that, because some of us would never move if we had to be completely healed before we did something. But to be able to evaluate, this is what I am experiencing. This is my area of pain. This is my area of hurt. And I need to make sure that I become, in the course of this, emotionally healthy, because I know my emotional health will affect my performance in anything I do. It's important to get that emotional health. And if you need an emotional physician, go to an emotional physician. You go to a doctor, physical doctor. If something happens to your body, if your tooth broke, you would go to a dentist. So if your emotions are broken in some ways, don't be hesitant to access the resources that God has given you to go find somebody to help you with that. If you are spiritually broken, maybe you've got some church hurt, this kind of thing, then you got to find somewhere where you feel safe, where you can enjoy the presence of the Lord and enjoy the presence of other believers. So all of this, it kind of goes into your own personal business plan. You have your business plan that you would give to a bank, but in terms of your own personal business plan, you are a whole person coming to this venture. So write down who you are and how you come to this venture at this point, what is. And then he said, write down the things that will happen after this. So what is your plan for what you want to happen after this? And write it in detail. Get the vision from the Lord and start writing. Start writing. Oh my gosh, start writing. The reason for that is because if you write it, then there's a significantly larger chance that you're actually going to do what you've written down. I found if I have it right over there on my wall, and I post what I'm going to do, I find if I say I'm going to do something and I put it on my wall to do for that day, I get it done. Somehow it enters into who I am, or my mind, or it enters somewhere in me, and I end up doing what I've decided to. But if I don't write it down, I can wander around and turn on something, a TV as background noise, and I start washing clothes and cleaning and cooking, and then just generally waste time. Then at the end of the day, I was like, oh my gosh, I intended to do that, and then haven't done it. But if I write it down, put it on the wall, it's as good as done. I have this internal urgency to get out and do it. So I have what exercise I want to do, how much I want to exercise every day, because I've been talking to the Lord about my body and exercising. And so I got that written down. And I find that I have a compulsion to actually do what I wrote down. And inevitably, I get it done because I've written it down. If you have a vision that the Lord has given you, not just for exercise, but whatever that is, then write that down and you can see what the plan is. In this particular case, I love the divine communication strategy here when the Lord says, therefore, write down the things that you have seen and the things that are and the things will happen after this. Because this idea of writing things down is not just our idea. We have the Holy Scriptures because God wanted it written down. We have the book of Revelation because God wanted it written down. Anything that you need a record of, anything that you want to say, anything you want to communicate, although you can communicate orally, when you communicate orally, it's gone after it's out of your mouth. But if you write it down, it hasn't gone anywhere. It's right there. You can always go back and revisit that. You can edit it, et cetera, et cetera. So what I want you to do as the Lord leads, is to begin to write things down, to begin to say, I'm going to accept the divine communication strategy that Jesus himself used when he got ready to look at the book of Revelation. He wanted it written down. But what did he want written down? The things that you've seen, the things that are, and the things will happen after this. So the book of Revelation is a prophetic book, and it's going to tell us what's going to happen. What is going to happen so that we are not surprised when it begins to happen. Before he even starts talking about what's going to happen, ultimately, he wants to say that I'm sending this information to specific churches, and these churches are made up of humans, and these churches have weaknesses and they have strengths. And so what I need to do is to acknowledge their strengths, and then I need to address their weaknesses even before we get started. And I think that's applicable for us too, that we look at ourselves when we begin to think about writing things down, begin to think about this new season in our life, or what we're going to do in the next season, or what we're going to do going forward, that we really have an idea then of not only who we are, and not only what we're going to do, but our strengths and our weaknesses. And then to be able to address the weaknesses to the extent that we need to. I do not believe that it has been confirmed in research, that we need to spend all our time correcting our weaknesses. Rather, it's helpful for us to surround ourselves with people whose strengths are our weaknesses. But it is good to know that, because if you know what your weaknesses are, then you can say, oh, I do have a tendency to do that. My weakness is communication, oddly, because I spend my life communicating. But when it comes to really communicating with other people the things that they need to know, it's gone. It's so hard for me. I'm like, I forgot to tell that person this. I forgot to tell that person that. So it's good for me to have someone around me that will make sure that all those bases are covered, make sure that people understand what they need to do, that kind of thing, if they're trying to help me with some project, because I am not going to get it. It's just not going to happen. It's one of my weaknesses. And I need to acknowledge that. Like, I don't need to think I'm Superwoman and able to do everything, because I'm not Superwoman. I'm not able to do everything. So I want to exercise some wisdom and find people who love me and who are willing to help me to become who I am called to be, and to fill in those weaknesses. I hate math. Another weakness. Let me call somebody in that can help me with anything that has to do with math. I was with my grandchildren the other day. Actually, it was yesterday. And then they love math. Their father's an engineer, and it came through the bloodline, right? So they love math. And so they made up a board game. And part of the board game was every movement on the board game, you had to answer this question that had to do with some kind of equation. And I told them up front, I'm not going to be able to answer any of those. Do y'all have alternatives, like a different way? I'm not going to be able to get any of those right. And their mother said, I'm not going to be able to get them right either. She got my blood. Oh, goodness gracious. We all do have strengths and weaknesses, and let's give those to the Lord and surround ourselves with people who can help us. But ultimately, what I think the Lord is doing here is not only giving an outline of how he wants to proceed with telling us what he wants us to know, but he's also giving us a strategy for success in our own life. All right, see y'all next time. Bye-bye.